immersing yourself in another part of the fantastic reality of pagan Slavs. Today, we will talk about how, according to Slavic beliefs, the world was created. The world of the Slavs was represented by the sacred cosmic tree, like Axis Mundi world tree. It was most surely an oak. And side note, an oak is a sacred tree in Slavic culture. We will briefly discuss it why in the next parts of this video. So the branches of this sacred cosmic oak tree held up the sky, and also they were inhabited by Żarptak, or using Russian word Żarptica. It was a firebird. It was a fantastic creature, paradise-like creature, most commonly known in Russian folklore. But we may discuss it in other videos. So, coming back to the topic, the celestial part, the branches was known as Prawia, and it was the crown of the world. In the middle of the tree was the earthly world of humans, Jawia. The roots were entwined by Shmi, where Nawia, the world of the dead, was located. I think it is important to remember, while we are discussing Slavic culture, that concept of cosmic world tree is very ancient, and it's not typical or unique to Slavic culture. It's quite universal, but we will discuss it from Slavic culture perspective. So each of these realms that we have already discussed briefly, so Prawia, Nawia, Jawia, were governed by different deity. So Perun was the guardian of Jawia, the world of humans, and Perun was the god of thunders. He was one of most important deities in Slavic mythology and religion, and he was associated with an oak tree. And here is why. Very often, when the thunder was striking the earth, it struck the oak. So humans believed that this was Perun's, showing and proving that this is his favorite tree. So it became sacred, and it became sacred to the point where many sacrifices for the gods were provided in the roots, like under those trees. So that's why this oak is so strongly associated with the cosmic tree. And then we have Veles, who was the god of death. He ruled Nawia. And we have Svarog. He looked after Prawia. It's worth mentioning that the pantheon of gods was not unified among Slavic tribes. And by that I mean that when we take, for example, the main classification of Slavic cultures and languages, which is Western, Eastern, and Southern Slavs, even among these groups, depending on the region where the tribes lived, there is vast differentiation between deities, between, any spiritual beings and demons and personifications of certain ideas. So it really differed around among the regions, and that is why in some cases it may happen that if you are interested in this topic, when you read about certain god or certain function of a god, it may be differently described in other cultures. I mean, in other Slavic cultures. So if we say which Western Slavs, and there is a certain god, the same function of this god will be represented by another deity in, for example, Eastern Slavic cultures. So this is a note to be remembered because it may seem like there are many contradictions among Slavic creatures, like mythologies, and it doesn't come from, that the researchers or the scientists who do the research of the culture don't know what they do, but it differed so much. So this is worth remembering, because probably in the course of this project you will hear from me about gods or demons or, I don't know, personifications of certain traditions or ideas, and it will be different depending on the region that we will, describe at the time of the recording. So this is something to be remembered before we move on with the topic. But coming back to the topic, let's see more in details how these three realms were described. So we start with Prawia. That was the crown of the world. It is linked to the Polish word prawo, and is derived from the Proto-Slavic prav, meaning right, proper, fitting. And it means, so prawo means, so prawo is a law, but prawo is righteous. So a righteous person is a good person. And the term also relates to a set of principles, commands, prohibitions. So that would be the law, prawo, meaning of this word, and all these linguistics, all their linguistics perspective suggests that Prawia was the realm of ultimate good, like the cradle of everything proper and correct. And the guardian of Prawia was a god lawgiver, Svaruk, so he was creator of all order, of all principles that were above the world, and that all beings, celestial, humans, demons, spirits, had to follow. And of course Prawia was the home to all celestial beings. Jawia was the world between the heavens and the netherworld, the world of humans, and it is associated with the word Java, from Proto-Slavic ave, which is an adverb meaning in a state of wakefulness, not in a dream. And in here again, not in a dream would not simply mean only, physically being awake, not asleep, but also a world of dream would have deep spiritual meaning to Slavs. So that would be a strict division between non-spiritual, so real, and spiritual world. Jawia is the tangible, visible reality, contrasting with the gods in Prawia, who didn't frequently interact with humans compared to Greek or Roman mythology. So I remember, because Greek and Roman mythology was something that was covered a lot during my school years, that the gods sex or interact with humans, even sometimes procreate with humans. So this was not happening in Slavic culture. Prawia was the world that could not be entered by any mortal. And then we have Nawia. Nawia represents the afterlife, the realm of death and spirits. The term derives in Polish language from the archaic Polish word Nawia, referring to the souls of the deceased. The word originates from Proto-Slavic language Nav, that means deceased. So the ruler of the Nawia was Veles. According to some legends, the border between human world and the netherworld was river or sea. And here we also see, if we compare it to other mythologies, that it resembles Greek mythology, where in order to get to the underworld, the souls of the dead had to travel through the river Styx. So I think this concept was also widely known in human subconsciousness in many cultures. And the gates of Nawia were guarded by Shmi. Shmi was a sort of reptilian with wings, a dragon-like creature, if you will, just to help you imagine. But it was not a dragon per se. So here we also have the concept of a beast, a monster guarding the Nawia gates, like we have it in Greek mythology, for example. Nawia was sometimes depicted as a great green plain where Veles, the king of Nawia, like a shepherd, led the souls. And here we also see that many functions and images of, some spiritual places, or, the heaven, how Slavs were imagining their heaven, were closely linked with the most important functions in real life. Like, the shepherd was taking care of the herd, the animals, and it was a very, very important role. And I think this is also a widely known concept among the tribes or cultures where being shepherd and having animals was an important part of the survival, like also in the Christian Catholic religion. A god Jesus is compared quite oftenly to shepherd, and the people, humans, to the flock that is being taken care by the shepherd. And opposite to Prawia, both Nawia and Jawia actually could interfere and interpenetrate one another. So it would mean that spirits from Nawia were able to visit Jawia, so basically haunt the humans. And of course, the living from Jawia would go to Nawia after death. So Prawia was out of the reach of Nawia and Jawia, but Jawia and Nawia would actually interact a lot. And in discussing these three realms, it is impossible not to mention Verai. And here we come to the next side note. We will have some side notes in here, but I think it is important to fully comprehend the topic. So as I mentioned before, there was no unification among the gods, the pantheon of gods, throughout Islamdom. And the same would be with many concepts. And sometimes, and I think it comes from not having enough sources, enough texts. So basically, what is done is researchers and specialist experts from the topic they were building, and also based on folklore, which is rich with many traces from the past traditions and beliefs, but mostly without any sources. They were able to create most likely assumptions, so that means that there must be contradictions, and in here the Verai topic will be actually full of contradictions, and you will see soon why. But to me personally, and also personal note in here, so as I mentioned before, because there are not many texts and sources regarding Slavic culture and religion, and probably because where I live, Christian religion is very strong and very significant, the topic of Slavic culture and pagan religion is not really covered during school years. So we basically cover Roman and Greek mythologies, because there must be, something when you have literature lectures, when you take classes of literature, you have some myths of, how the world was created, the cosmogonia, right? But in Slavic countries, and where I live, this is a Slavic country, so I can speak only for my country, this is not covered. And that is why, if I am speaking about it, it's because I am mostly doing my personal research, I'm reading books, I'm interested in it, but some of these concepts would be quite new for me, or sometimes even, quite unclear and confusing. So please do not find it weird if I say that, wow, I'm fascinated by this, or wow, this is so unusual, because to me, I also discovered this world together with you. So the fact that I come from the background of Slavs doesn't mean that we are familiar with this, which I think is quite unfortunate, but just a side note. So there are many contradictions, and Slavic people in general are not familiarized at school with this culture. And we come back to Verai. So as I said, it will a bit contradict what we have already learned about the concept of how the world functions in Slavic culture. So Verai was a mythical heavenly land where birds flew for winter, and this is quite typical for Northern European countries, that the birds, I think in the end of the fall, they fly to warmer countries for winter, because that is, I mean, not all birds, but some birds, because that is their strategy of survival. And so the Verai would be in Slavic mythology, the place where they actually flew to survive the winter. And this is also the place from where spring would come, and storks would come bringing babies. Stork is a bird. It's a big whitey blacky bird, and it also is very, I think, important symbol in Western Slavic countries. And even today, in my culture, it is said that storks bring babies. It's like a sort of superstition. So yeah, I think it is quite interesting, because it came from the Slavic culture, and it it went through folklore of common people, and then, despite Christianity being very popular and people being very bonded with Christian religion, some superstitions like that survived. And so the Verai was also the place where the babies come from. And the Verai somewhat resembles Prawia. So that's a contradiction, number one, right? As a celestial realm, but also has similarities to Nawia. So Prawia and Nawia were, if we look at the topic from the perspective that we started within here, they are completely different. They do not intersect. But Verai is a bit of each. So that's the contradiction, and I think it's not at this point quite clear for me how to locate it in the map of culture, Slavic culture. But I think that is what makes this culture so beautiful and so extraordinary. So most likely under Christian influence, Verai was divided into two concepts. So so it sort of got two meanings. First one was a bird Verai, and it was associated with returning souls. So like birds return after winter. And some would see here a mark of sort of a trace of belief in rebirth, reincarnation. So I mean the wandering of the souls, the rebirth of the soul in various bodies, cycles of life. The second, but of course there is no saying that for sure this is what Slavs believed in. I'm not stating that. I'm just saying that some people would see resemblance in here. The second concept of Verai was an underground dragon snake-like land identified with Nawia. And in here we also have a sort of positive negative connotation to those two Verais, because the first one, bird Verai, is obviously the good one. This is the one that you would actually want to visit, right? And the second one, where you have dragons and snakes, it's definitely not what you want for your eternity. But in here, it's worth also mentioning that this negative connotation, so that the Netherland was not a very good place, might have been the effect of the strong dualism following Christian religion. And what I mean by that is, I do not state that dualism is foreign for pagan cultures, because basically dualism is the way we as humans make some order in our mind about the world. This is how we perceive the world. We usually look at opposites. It's how we easier embrace the reality. But what I mean in here is that Christian dualism was very black and white division of the world, so there was not much space for, let's say, gray area where something was not only good or only bad, but had features of both. So in Christian religion we have very strong division. So either you're a sinner or a good person or a saint, right? And in here we have the same division. So maybe Verai appeared a bit. So maybe Verai was a creation, a mythology of maybe late Slavic culture. But basically, it would mean that the bird Verai was a symbol of heaven, of paradise, and the underworld Verai was basically hell. So the place where souls of the sinners were sent for eternal penance. And continuing topic of the cosmic tree, so the Prawia, Jawia, Nawia, it is also believed was symbolized by the deity Trekwav. Trekwav would mean basically three head. So it was a god with three heads or faces that was worshipped in Pomerania and Prawia. And both regions are located in mostly northwestern part of North Slavic, close to the Baltic Sea. And this tripartite division of the world is quite universal, especially among Indo-European groups, and Slavs are of course the part of the Indo-European group nation. And it somehow also resembles the Norse world order expressed through Yggdrasil, the world tree. This symbolism is significant and extends to many aspects of life. So the tripartite division functions in the model of human psyche created by Freud. So described by Freud, which are ego, id, and superego. And ego would represent here consciousness. So that would be, if we translate it to cosmic tree plants, it would be Jawia. It would be the tangible world. And it would be primary psychic organization, subconscious, unconscious part. So that would be Nawia. And we have super ego, which is the place of order, where we have our conscience, our moral values, our ideals. This is what basically makes us good. And this is Prawia. The division of concepts and ideals into three also holds symbolism. I think this is very interesting. So in many cultures, the number three is divine. And if we take Christianity, for example, there are numerous references to the number three, but I think the most common one is Holy Trinity, which would be Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So this is the God represented by these three holy persons. And the number three embodies therefore perfection and expresses the unity of all beings with the Absolute. The creation of the world in Slavic beliefs has, interestingly, three versions. The myth of the earthly plunge, the origin of the world from the cosmic egg, and the creation of the world from a fragmented, dismembered figure. The first version, the earthly plunge, posits the theory of two opposing forces. So we have God and the devil, meaning the deity of good and deity of evil. And in the Slavic world, Svarog, though some argue that maybe it would be Perun, the Lord of Thunder, similar to Zeus or Jupiter. So Svarog would represent good, Prawia, and Veles represents darkness, evil, and the underworld, which is Nawia. But as I mentioned before, in principle, Nawia would not represent anything negative per se, but this negative connotation would come with time, and I think also with some Christian influences. And of course, when we speak about the deity of good and deity of evil, in the mythology of Polabian Slavs, so this is this northern part, we have Białoboga, Białobóg, and Czarnobóg. So we could translate it to white god and black god, which is also a symbol of very strong black-white dualism. However, I think it is also interesting to know that Bóg, a god, is is, is a word that means the god, but this this word was added to many deities' names in Slavic culture to underline the celestial nature of the deity, but didn't mean that this is the main god, right? So in Slavic, in Christian culture, in Christian religion, the name of the god is of course known from the Holy Bible, but it is not used very much in, common everyday conversation. If there is any conversation about religion or the god is mentioned by the word God, right? As you hear now. But for Slavic pagan religion, where there was many gods, so we have polytheism. The god would not mean the main god, but it would be an addition to the name, like a suffix, if we speak in linguistic way. So that's an interesting note, number 2. But in general, we had those two opposing forces that would create the world, and how it went. So the beginning is that there was nothing but a space full of dark waters. Not sure if these were oceans, but waters, deep waters. And of course, apart from the waters, there were the deity of good and the deity of evil. And both, with time, became a bit bored of, let's be honest, quite empty world. So they decided that maybe they could change something, create something new. But in order to create a land where they would create a life, they had to have a bit of soil, and it could be obtained only from the bottom of the waters. And in here we can see that already in this myth, the position of the deity of evil was in submission to the deity of good, because the god and the devil, so the god of good, told the devil to go to dive into the waters and to bring the soil. And so the devil did it, and he dived into the waters, took a handful of earth, and came back to the surface. And so the deity of good took this piece of soil and sprinkled it on the surface of the water, creating a piece of land. But it was not a big piece of land, it was just a small one. But this act of creation exhausted the gods. The god of good and the god of evil was exhausted from diving down toward the bottom of the water. So they both decided to take a rest, and the god of good fell asleep. And the devil, being the evil creature, decided that he doesn't want to share the position of creator of the world with the god. So he decided to push the god into the abyss, to water. But while he was trying to do that, interestingly, God didn't wake up. But the land, the surface on which the god was sleeping, was actually spreading around. So basically, by trying to push God into different directions, the devil was spreading the earth, the surface. And that is how the world was created. The second myth is the version involving the cosmic egg. And before you laugh about it, because I think maybe it may sound funny, that why the egg, why the cosmic egg? So the egg has very strong, it's again very important symbol in Slavic culture. So the egg symbolizes life, basically, the source of life, which is why, for example, still nowadays, Slavs consume eggs during Easter, where Easter is a Christian celebration, Christian holiday, and also to give you some perspective, eggs were given as a sacrifice, were sacrificed to the gods. And why this is significant? Because in the past, the eggs were something rare, so it wasn't that they were consumed quite often by common people. They were usually stored for celebrations, for holidays, for sacrifices. They were not as common as today. Like you can go to the shop and buy whatever if you live in Europe, for example. I don't know about other countries, but in Europe this works like that. And so they, being quite rare, made this sacrifice even more special and even more important and coming from the heart. Because if you sacrifice something that you do not have plenty of, it means that you really care. So that was very important for Slavs. And there's also one interesting reference to eggs, which I read just today, so I think I may have to research it a bit more. But it really got my interest. So that, because there is a tradition of painting the eggs for the Easter, so before you eat those eggs, you boil them and you paint the shell. And the painting in Slavic culture meant that you were doing some sort of sorcery to prevent the world from collapsing. So this would have the magical meaning of preserving the natural order and existence of the world. So, but this is something I just read today, so I will have to research it a bit more, because honestly I have never heard about it before, and I'm quite interested in this cultural folklore Slavic topic. So, but then again, I didn't read all the books that are available, so probably there are many topics that I haven't heard. But anyway, coming back to the egg topic, so as we say, that was a very important symbol of life, and that is why we have the cosmic egg, that is the source of creation. So it would look like that. The cosmic egg, would be dropped, but we don't know by whom. Maybe by gods, maybe by a paradise bird like Żarptak that we referred in the beginning. It would be broken in the ocean. So again, we have the image of the world full of nothing but deep waters, and the lower shell became the earth, and the upper shell became the sky, the heaven. So that would be the second myth. And the third one, the last one, would involve the dismemberment of the first human being. So it would be like, and I didn't find any unique one myth. It were rather some folklore songs or poems, which I cannot translate because it would not sound well. But the essence of this was that either it was the first human being, so Adam, in folklore, and of course it is influenced by Christian, or it would be some god or some deity that would give their body to create the world from it. Like, so I don't know, some parts would be the stars, some parts would be the surface of the land, some would be the ocean. So that's how it works, and I think this may resemble the Norse mythology, where we have involved the first giant Ymir, but I'm not an expert in here, so sorry if I'm mistaken. And so we conclude our journey, our episode. I hope you liked it, and is any specific topic you would like to see. I have seen the request for bringing more details about Peru in the comment, and I plan it for the next episode, but this one was already planned when the comment arrived. So sorry, I couldn't do Peru right now, but I really hope you liked it. Please let me know what are Easter traditions in your cultures if you do celebrate Easter, and if you are not Slav, or if you are Slav but you don't do eggs. So please let me know, because I'm interested really. I think that these early cultures and myths, they are saying a lot about us, about our beliefs, our perspective of the world, on the world, and how we function in every day. So it would be really good to be educated about other cultures as well. So thank you very much for listening, and sleep tight.